The world holds its breath. Tension crackles in the air as if everyone is waiting for the next headline, the next explosion, the next escalation. In living rooms and public squares across the globe, people are glued to their screens searching for hope, but finding only uncertainty. The Middle East is a tinderbox, and sparks are flying faster than ever. Cities that once bustled with life now echo with sirens and distant booms. The sense of unease is palpable, as the region teeters on the edge of catastrophe. The conflict has erupted into open warfare between Israel and Iran, no longer a shadow war but a direct, brutal confrontation. Missiles streak across the night sky and the world watches as two regional giants collide in a battle that threatens to engulf their neighbors. What began with the Hamas attack on Israel in October 2023 has spiraled into a regional firestorm, pulling in global powers and threatening to redraw the map. The conflict's shockwaves have reached far beyond the Middle East, igniting protests and diplomatic crises from Europe to Asia. Israel's assassinations of key leaders in late 2024 were met with Iran's first-ever direct missile strikes on Israeli soil. The tit-for-tat violence has shattered any illusion of stability, and each new attack brings the world closer to the brink. Last week, Israel launched a massive attack on Iran's nuclear facilities, killing senior Iranian leaders. The strikes left devastation in their wake, sending shockwaves through the international community and raising fears of nuclear escalation. Tehran has vowed overwhelming revenge. The streets of Iran fill with angry crowds, and the government's rhetoric grows more defiant by the hour. The world braces for what comes next. The United States, Israel's staunchest ally, is now deeply entangled. American diplomats scramble to contain the fallout while military advisors work side by side with Israeli commanders, preparing for the worst. President Trump backs Israel's right to defend itself, but claims to seek diplomacy. Yet his words are met with skepticism, as the machinery of war grinds forward and the world wonders if peace is even possible. American forces are on high alert, evacuating non-essential personnel from embassies and bases across the region. The skies above the Middle East buzz with military aircraft, and the threat of a wider conflict looms ever larger. Iran's defense minister warns that all U.S. bases are within missile range, a threat made real before but now on a far greater scale. The world's most powerful militaries are locked in a deadly standoff, and the margin for error is razor thin. The risk of a direct U.S.-Iran war is higher than ever. Each day brings new provocations, and the possibility of a single miscalculation spiraling into all-out war haunts every decision-maker. This is not a distant conflict. The stakes are global. Markets tumble, oil prices surge, and governments everywhere scramble to prepare for the fallout of a war that could touch every corner of the planet. We are no longer talking about limited strikes, but the real possibility of a full-scale war that could ignite a third world war. The mobilization of major powers signals a terrifying new phase, one that could reshape the world order for generations. The world stands on the edge of an abyss. As night falls, uncertainty reigns, and the question on everyone's mind is chillingly simple. What happens next? President Trump faces a defining test: his promise to end endless wars versus the reality of escalating conflict. He campaigned on America first, pledging to bring troops home. Now his administration's support for Israel is pulling the U.S. closer to war. This stance is fracturing his political base. Conservative voices like Tucker Carlson and Rand Paul warn that deeper involvement would betray voters and risk American lives. The public is weary. Decades of war have left deep scars, and there's little appetite for another Middle East conflict. A recent Pew survey shows half of young Republicans now view Israel unfavorably, a sign of shifting priorities. Trump walks a tightrope loyalty to an ally versus a nation tired of war. Diplomacy continues, but confidence in a deal is fading. The world watches. Will Trump be a peacemaker or a wartime president? His choice will define his legacy and the fate of millions. The nation waits, divided and anxious. The nuclear shadow looms large over this conflict, casting uncertainty and fear across the region. The possibility of nuclear escalation is no longer a distant threat, but a chilling reality that shapes every decision and every move. Iran is enriching uranium to near weapons grade, insisting it's a sovereign right under international law. Iranian officials argue that their nuclear program is for peaceful purposes, but the world remains unconvinced. The technical progress is undeniable, and the pace of enrichment has alarmed many observers. The US and Israel see it as an existential threat, a red line that cannot be crossed. For them, a nuclear-armed Iran would destabilize the entire Middle East and threaten their very survival. President Trump has drawn a red line, declaring that Iran will not be allowed to obtain a nuclear weapon no matter the cost. His administration's stance is clear: all options are on the table, including military force. The recent Israeli strike on Iran's nuclear facilities, likely with US approval, signals a shared resolve and a willingness to act preemptively. The message is unmistakable: the world is watching, and consequences will be severe. If Iran races for a bomb in retaliation, a preemptive strike from the US or Israel could ignite all-out war. The risk of escalation is real, and the consequences could be catastrophic for the entire region. Intelligence is conflicted. Some say Iran isn't building a bomb, but the line between capability and intent is razor thin. The fog of uncertainty makes every decision fraught with peril, and misjudgments could prove fatal. The Israeli attack may have pushed Iran closer to the brink, convincing some in Tehran that only nuclear arms can guarantee its survival. The cycle of provocation and retaliation grows ever more dangerous. Diplomatic options are vanishing as trust evaporates. Negotiations stall, and the window for peaceful resolution narrows with each passing day. We are in a dangerous game of brinkmanship, where one miscalculation could trigger catastrophe. The world holds its breath, hoping that cooler heads will prevail. The world hasn't faced such a direct nuclear threat in decades. The echoes of the Cold War are unmistakable, but this time, the stakes feel even higher. The stakes could not be higher. As the clock ticks down, the world watches, hoping for a solution before the red line is crossed. As missiles fly abroad, a silent war threatens the American homeland. Iran's cyber capabilities could target power grids, financial systems, and critical infrastructure, plunging cities into chaos. These are not Hollywood scenarios. National security experts are preparing for them now. Beyond cyberspace, the fear of sleeper cells grows. A war with Iran could activate domestic terror plots against soft targets. The result: anxiety, disruption, and a sense that nowhere is truly safe. Power outages could mean shortages, fear of attacks could bring lockdowns and heavy security. 21st century warfare means the front line is everywhere. Every citizen becomes a potential target. The conflict would be felt in every American community. The US military is unmatched in technology and power, but war is about more than hardware. Experts warn, a conflict with Iran would be brutal, high casualty, and fought on Iran's home turf. Today's young soldiers grew up with the scars of Iraq and Afghanistan. War weariness runs deep. National unity feels fragile in a polarized country. Would Americans rally behind a new war, or would it deepen divisions? The readiness of our weapons is clear. The readiness of our spirit is uncertain. That question remains dangerously unanswered. The rhetoric is turning religious on both sides. In Iran, leaders frame the conflict as a cosmic struggle against the great Satan. In the US, some see biblical prophecy unfolding. This religious fervor makes compromise nearly impossible, transforming adversaries into existential enemies. When war is seen as holy, violence becomes righteous and diplomacy vanishes. America's core values, religious freedom, separation of church and state, are at risk. Are we fighting for security, or being drawn into an ancient religious conflict? The battle with Iran could become a battle for America's very identity. To predict the course of this looming conflict, we must carefully weigh each side's strengths, weaknesses, and the strategies they're likely to employ. This is not just a clash of armies, but a collision of doctrines, ambitions, and the will to endure. The United States boasts overwhelming military superiority, cutting-edge technology, unmatched global reach, and the ability to project power anywhere on the planet. Its arsenal includes advanced fighter jets, stealth bombers, and a navy that dominates the world's oceans. Economically, the US can impose crippling sanctions, aiming to paralyze Iran's economy and military infrastructure. America's primary objective would be to dismantle Iran's nuclear program, degrade its military capabilities, and force Tehran back to the negotiating table. Precision airstrikes, cyber operations, and special forces raids would be at the forefront of this campaign. Iran, fully aware it cannot win a conventional war, would turn to asymmetric tactics, unleashing waves of missiles, mobilizing proxy militias, and waging economic and cyber warfare. Its strategy is to make any conflict as costly and unpredictable as possible for its adversaries. Iran's vast missile arsenal poses a direct threat to US bases across the region and to Israeli cities, creating a constant risk of escalation and regional chaos. Proxy forces like Hezbollah and other allied militias could open multiple fronts, stretching US and allied resources thin and drawing neighboring countries into the conflict. For Iran, the ultimate goal is regime survival, inflicting enough pain and uncertainty to force a political settlement, while rallying domestic and regional support through displays of resilience and defiance. Control of the Strait of Hormuz gives Iran a powerful lever. By threatening to disrupt the flow of oil, Iran could trigger a global energy crisis, raising the stakes for every nation dependent on Middle Eastern oil. The US seeks a swift, decisive victory, hoping to overwhelm Iran before it can fully mobilize its asymmetric tools. But Iran's aim is to exhaust America's will to fight, dragging out the conflict and making every gain costly. It's a battle between a sledgehammer and a web, raw power versus entanglement, brute force against a network of hidden threats and unpredictable tactics. The outcome hinges on whether the US can achieve its objectives before the human, financial, and political costs become unbearable, both at home and abroad. Both sides are prepared for a long, punishing fight with no guarantee of a quick or clean resolution. The region, and the world, would pay the price, as civilians are displaced, cities are destroyed, and humanitarian crises multiply. The stakes are nothing less than the future of the Middle East, a future that hangs in the balance as these two militaries prepare for a confrontation that could reshape the world. In the face of global uncertainty, Americans are not powerless. Preparedness is about resilience, not fear. Every family should have an emergency kit: food, water, first aid, flashlights, and batteries. Keep some cash on hand in case digital systems fail. Safeguard important documents, both physical and digital copies. Build community networks. Know your neighbors, share skills, and plan for emergencies together. Strong communities are more resilient than isolated individuals. Preparation empowers you to face crisis with confidence. Take simple steps now, before a crisis hits. The future is uncertain, but you can be ready. Resilience starts at home. Amid the drums of war, is there hope for peace? Escalation feels inevitable, but hope survives in exhaustion. Americans don't want another generation sent to war. Pragmatists in Iran know a full-scale conflict would be suicidal. Quiet diplomacy continues even as public rhetoric hardens. Are we ready for the costs, surveillance, economic hardship, moral compromise that war would bring? The path to peace is narrow but not closed. It demands courage from leaders and a public that insists on diplomacy. The hope for peace is slim, but it's a hope we must not abandon.